If you're not an AARP member, skip this movie. The Mule is not a particularly enthralling movie, but it's not bad. It just walks in between the line of mediocre and good. Clint Eastwood stars as Earl Stone, a geriatric horticulturist who specializes in creating award-winning daylilies. He's a man who puts work over family. He then becomes a drug mule after some financial hardships regarding his flower-growing business. It's apparent that he's really good at being a drug mule with his idiosyncrasies and harmless appearance to the rest of the world. There is, of course, the DEA after Earl and the cartel. The Mule, in general, felt half-done and reserved. There doesn't seem to be much of a focus or an all-out effort. It switches between Earl living his life and running drugs, his family, and the DEA trying to make big drug busts. At times, it feels like the storytelling is like, so this happens, and so this happens, instead of, so this happens, therefore this happens. It's just inconsequential. But I think that is what happens when you try to tell a real-life story with a sense of realism. If you go too realistic, it becomes dull with a few interesting points. This movie fails at being similar to a documentary, and it fails at telling a compelling narrative. It's just there. It's meant to be a middle-of-the-road film, appealing to the heart of middle America. I mean, for God's sakes, Earl lives in Illinois and drives down to Texas and back again. There are a couple moments that are reminiscent of the charm of Gran Torino. Yes, The Mule and Gran Torino were written by Nick Schenk. This one has less offensive language coming out of a protagonist's mouth, but that's what made Gran Torino special. A highly prejudiced Korean War veteran coming to terms with his hatred and doing the right thing in the end. The Mule just has a slightly prejudiced Korean War veteran doing the wrong things out of self-interest. Since the movie doesn't contain the language that Gran Torino had, the few off-color remarks Earl makes seem out of place. Gran Torino was from 2008, so it's as if the language was neutralized for today's more politically correct culture. Eastwood put those moments regarding race to show that his viewpoint still exists, but it feels tacked in there. It kind of falls into being unnecessarily offensive. It's either a "there it is" moment or a "what was that" moment. With respect to acting performances, Eastwood was pretty good, but I never feel like he plays different characters. However, Earl was distinct from Walt in Gran Torino. There's less anger in Earl. It's just an old man doing a job for money. There's less personal business other than the conflicts that he has with his family. He tries to stir up ties with his employers, but the cartel doesn't want to have anything to do with him. Only the people who gave him instructions for the first few drug runs actually care about him and don't mind his quirks. There's almost nobody and nothing that stand out in The Mule. Bradley Cooper, Clint Eastwood, Diane Wiest, Michael Pena, et al. Do their jobs. I didn't think too much about their acting performances. I wasn't floored, nor was I disappointed. The emotional depth that Wiest provides as Earl's ex-wife is probably the most out of all the characters. She exudes disappointment practically every time she sees Earl, as does most of his family. She doesn't overreact to his absenteeism to family events. It's as if she's used to it, and it's apparent that work is the main reason why he's divorced and estranged from his family. The film tries to set up a parallel between Earl and Bradley Cooper's character Colin Bates in the sense that they're both dedicated to work. It doesn't commit to this because the few times that they interact with each other is in passing, and the elderly Earl just passes his words of wisdom onto him. Earl's granddaughter is the only thing that ties Earl to the family because she gives him chances and believes in him. I thought it was realistic because if no one liked him, then this movie wouldn't have much of a purpose. He would honestly just keep running drugs if he didn't have family stopping him from going all in. There's one moment in this movie where I was like, what the hell? It was also addressed in John Mulaney and Pete Davidson's Weekend Update bit. This part did not need to be on the screen. Whatever artistic merit it had was lost when I had to see a geriatric Clint Eastwood without a shirt on with two voluptuous cartel women. We already knew that he had his way with women in an earlier scene at a motel where he was partying and had a good time with two other women. I guess it was meant to be funny if anything, but it was not comfortable to sit through. Despite not feeling much sympathy for the family, I think that this was intentional. If a protagonist doesn't know his family that well, then why would we know them either? We're supposed to feel some sort of emotional tie or relief towards the end of the film regarding his family, but at that point it's kind of like, does Eastwood even know how to end a film anymore? The Mule felt like it needed an ending with emotional weight so it could have a proper ending, but it felt forced. Like, what a great message that something that has to do with his family is the reason why the movie doesn't just go on and on about itself. I guess that's the lesson of a movie. Overall, this film is middle of the road. Don't expect a lot and you won't be disappointed. It's not going to be a movie that will age well. It's forgettable. It's a nice story about an old man being a drug mule. But so what? It doesn't reach the goal of being a decent retelling of an actual real-life story, nor can it stand on its own as an original story loosely based on true events. You wouldn't miss much if you chose to skip seeing this, and it wouldn't feel like a complete waste of time either if you did watch it.